Welcome. Today we will discuss the paper, The Illusion of Artificial Inclusion. This paper seems to examine the idea of replacing human participants in research with AI models, like large language models. What can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. That's a key topic in the paper. There's been a growing discussion in the research community about the potential of using large language models, or LLMs, to substitute human participants in a variety of fields like psychology, AI development, and user experience research. This is largely due to their increasing capabilities in generating human-like text and responses. The appeal is clear. They offer the allure of accelerating research, potentially lowering costs and increasing the scale of data collection, while also mitigating potential harm to participants. Some researchers have also considered simulating the participation of marginalized groups with AI as a way to address the persistent issue of underrepresentation in research data.
Interesting. The title of the paper is The Illusion of Artificial Inclusion. Why do you think the authors use this title? What are the issues with using LLMs to replace humans in research and development?
Right, so the title hints at the key argument of the paper that using AI to simulate human participation is not as inclusive as it might seem and could actually be exclusionary. There are both practical and intrinsic issues. One practical issue is that LLMs are trained on large amounts of text data that can reflect societal biases. This can lead to models generating responses that are not representative of all groups, especially marginalized communities. This bias undercuts the idea that AI can enhance diversity in research. Additionally, current models struggle to accurately reflect the nuances of human cognition, emotion, and behavior, particularly over time.
Are you saying that it's the lack of accuracy that makes the substitution a problem?
That's definitely part of it. These models can hallucinate information, making their responses unreliable at times. For researchers who want to use LLMs as stand-ins for human participants, the reliability and validity of the data generated by these models is paramount, since the accuracy of the models underpins the arguments for efficiency and cost saving. But the issues go deeper than accuracy.
How so?
The paper highlights that true participation in research is about more than just providing data. It's about representation and inclusion, which the authors discuss as related but separate ideas. Representation is the active work of making present the needs and perspectives of those being represented. Inclusion is about empowering participants, inviting them to collaboratively set the agenda and influence the direction of the research. The authors argue that replacing participants with LLMs fundamentally undermines these ideals.
Couldn't we argue that these models still represent human perspectives to some extent since they are trained on human data?
The concern is about the depth and authenticity of that representation. There's a big difference between a model processing language that expresses a perspective and a model actively reflecting a community's current needs and concerns. This is particularly relevant when considering the idea of simulating marginalized groups. Simply generating responses that superficially align with a certain demographic doesn't equate to genuine representation or empowerment.
Could you elaborate on the empowerment aspect of participation? How do AI models limit that?
When individuals participate in research, they have agency. They can choose to participate, to withhold information, and to voice their opinions about the process. This is especially important for groups that have historically been marginalized or exploited in research because participation can allow them to exercise power over the research process, to push back, and to demand accountability. Replacing them with AI models that have no real agency removes this power dynamic.
Apart from the social and ethical concerns, are there other limitations to using LLMs as participant substitutes?
Yes, the paper also talks about epistemological concerns, or how we understand and create knowledge. A lot of social and behavioral research in AI development relies on the idea of intersubjectivity, essentially the shared understanding between the researcher and the participant. For example, in user experience research, a researcher infers a participant's preference for a particular website design from their behavior, like clicking on a rating scale because they assume that they would behave similarly if they held the same preference. This shared understanding is disrupted when we replace humans with AI models.
Why is that? Isn't it possible that LLMs share some level of intersubjectivity with us since they are trained on human data?
While it's true that LLMs are trained on human data, the nature of their understanding is fundamentally different from human understanding and experience. We can't assume that because a model produces a human-like response, it has arrived at that response in a similar way to a human, or that it even means the same thing to the model as it would to a human. This limits the kinds of inferences researchers can make.
It sounds like the authors are quite critical of using AI to replace humans in research. Are they suggesting that we abandon this approach altogether?
Not necessarily. While the paper highlights serious concerns with the current proposals for substitution, it does leave open the possibility that we could reimagine the role of generative AI in research in a way that is more aligned with the values of representation, inclusion, and understanding. This would require a shift away from simply replacing participants towards creating frameworks that center participants, giving them a role in overseeing and guiding the use of these models, and acknowledging the limitations of AI in capturing the full complexity of human experiences. We might start to build AI systems that support authentic inclusion, which, in a way, is the real hope expressed in the paper.
Thank you for sharing these insights.